The shotgun blast that shattered the morning quiet sent a flock of crows screaming into the sky, and Delaney Norwood knew her father had finally lost what remained of his mind. She stood in the doorway of their weathered cabin just outside Tahlequah, Oklahoma, her right hand instinctively pulling deeper into the worn leather glove she never removed, watching as Samuel Norwood fired again at nothing but empty air and the ghosts of his own making. It was September 1878, and the heat still clung to the Oklahoma hills like a desperate lover, unwilling to release its grip even as autumn tried to shoulder its way in. "Papa, stop," Delaney called out, rushing down the 3 wooden steps that had warped in the summer sun. Her long brown hair, usually tied back in a sensible braid, had come loose during the night and now whipped around her face as she ran. "There is nobody there." Samuel Norwood spun toward her, his eyes wild and unfocused, the double-barrel shotgun wavering in his shaking hands. For a terrible moment, Delaney thought he might not recognize her, but then something cleared in his gaze and he lowered the weapon. "They were here, Laney. I saw them, clear as day, coming for us just like they came for your mama." Delaney reached her father and gently took the shotgun from his hands. Her mother had died 3 years ago from pneumonia, nothing more sinister than that, but grief and time had twisted Samuel's memories into something darker. "Mama died in her bed, Papa, you know that. Come inside now. I will make you some coffee." She guided him back toward the cabin, acutely aware of how thin he had become, how his hands trembled even when they were not holding a gun. The small farm they worked was suffering from his decline, and Delaney knew she could not manage it alone, not with her right hand the way it was. That hand, hidden beneath the glove, was her deepest shame. She had been born with it twisted and weak, the fingers curled inward like the petals of a dying flower, the muscles never quite formed right. She could grip things with it if she concentrated, could perform some tasks, but it would never be normal, would never be what a proper farm wife needed to help her husband work the land. At 22 years old, Delaney had long since accepted that marriage was not in her future. What man would want a wife who could not even properly knead bread or wring out laundry without struggle? The cabin was dark and cool inside, a blessed relief from the heat. Delaney settled her father into his rocking chair near the empty fireplace and went to prepare coffee, using her left hand for most tasks, her right only when absolutely necessary. She had become expert at hiding her limitation, at finding ways to compensate that made it less obvious to casual observers. "You need to go into town today," Samuel said suddenly, his voice clearer now. "We need supplies. Flour, sugar, some of that salt pork from Henderson's. And I need more ammunition." "Papa, you have plenty of ammunition. You have been shooting at shadows." "I need more," he insisted, his jaw setting in that stubborn way that meant argument was useless. Delaney sighed and poured the coffee, handing him a cup. "Fine, I will go this afternoon. But you have to promise me you will not fire that gun while I am gone unless there is a real threat." "A real one, Papa." He nodded, but she was not sure he heard her. His gaze had drifted to the window, watching for enemies that existed only in his damaged mind. 3 hours later, Delaney drove their wagon into Tahlequah, the old mare pulling with the patient resignation of an animal who had made this journey 1,000 times. The town was bustling with activity, as it usually was on a Friday afternoon. Tahlequah had grown considerably since becoming the capital of the Cherokee Nation back in the 1840s, and now it served as a crossroads for cattlemen, farmers, Cherokee citizens, and drifters passing through on their way to somewhere else. Delaney guided the wagon to Henderson's Mercantile and tied up the mare, making sure her glove was pulled tight and secure. Inside the store, The familiar smells of tobacco, coffee, and leather greeted her. Mrs. Henderson, a plump woman with kind eyes and graying hair, looked up from where she was arranging bolts of fabric. Delaney Norwood, as I live and breathe. We have not seen you in near about 3 weeks. How is your father managing? Delaney said, which was the kindest lie she could muster. I need some supplies today. She rattled off her list while Mrs. Henderson gathered items, carefully counting out the coins from the small leather pouch she kept tied at her waist. Money was tight, had been tight for a while now, but they were not destitute yet. The small vegetable garden she maintained brought in a little income, and they still had a few chickens that laid regularly. Will there be anything else, dear? Mrs. Henderson asked as she wrapped the purchases in brown paper. Delaney hesitated, then shook her head. She had wanted to ask about work, about any jobs in town that might suit her limitations, but pride held her tongue. No, thank you, Mrs. Henderson. As she gathered her packages, the door to the mercantile swung open and a man walked in, and Delaney felt her breath catch in her throat. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against his dusty shirt. His hat was pushed back on his head, revealing dark hair and eyes so blue they reminded her of the deep pools in the Illinois River where she used to swim as a child. A gun belt hung low on his hips, and he moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. "Afternoon," he said, tipping his hat to both women. His voice was deep, with a slight drawl that marked him as coming from further south, maybe Texas. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Henderson said warmly. "You must be Isaac Anderson. My husband said you would be stopping by." "Yes, madam. I am looking for boarding while I work the Patterson Ranch. Your husband mentioned you might know of a place." Mrs. Henderson pursed her lips thoughtfully. "Well now, there is old Mrs. Crawford, who sometimes takes in boarders, though she has gotten particular in her old age. The boarding house on Main Street is full up, last I heard. It is a busy time of year with the cattle drives coming through." Delaney found herself staring at the man, Isaac Anderson, taking in details she had no business noticing. There was a scar above his left eyebrow, faint but visible. His hands, she noticed, were large and capable, with calluses that spoke of hard work. He had to be close to her own age, maybe a year or two older. As if sensing her gaze, Isaac turned and looked directly at her, and Delaney felt heat flood her cheeks. She quickly looked down at her packages, fumbling to gather them with her left hand while keeping her right carefully concealed behind the counter. "Let me help you with those," Isaac said, stepping forward. "No, I can manage," Delaney said quickly, perhaps too quickly, because both he and Mrs. Henderson looked at her with surprise. "It is no trouble, miss. Looks like you have your hands full." Before she could protest again, he had gathered the 3 heaviest packages, leaving her with only the smallest one. This close, she could smell horse and leather and something else, something clean like sage. "My wagon is just outside," she said stiffly, acutely aware of how her right hand was pressed against her side, hidden in the folds of her skirt. Isaac followed her out into the bright afternoon sun. The heat seemed even more oppressive after the cool of the store, and Delaney could feel sweat beginning to form on her brow. At the wagon, Isaac carefully placed the packages in the back, arranging them so they would not shift during the drive home. "Thank you," Delaney managed, still not quite meeting his eyes. "That was kind of you." "Isaac Anderson," he said, holding out his hand, "since we were not properly introduced inside." Delaney stared at his outstretched hand, her heart beginning to pound. This was the moment she dreaded most in any social interaction. She could not shake hands properly, could not grip with any real strength, and the moment anyone felt her crippled hand through the glove, they would know. They would see the twisted fingers, feel the weakness, and their expression would change from friendliness to pity or, worse, revulsion. "Delaney Norwood," she said, but did not take his hand. Instead, she gave a small nod and turned to climb into the wagon. "Miss Norwood, wait." Something in his voice made her pause, one foot on the wagon step. She looked back at him and was surprised to see not offense in his expression but curiosity. "Did I do something to upset you?" "No, of course not. You have been very helpful. I just need to get home to my father." "Will I see you in town again?" It was a strange question, too forward really for a first meeting, but there was something earnest in the way he asked it that made her answer honestly. "I come to town about once a week for supplies. Then I hope I will see you again, Miss Norwood." She nodded and climbed into the wagon, taking the reins in her left hand and guiding the mare away from the mercantile. Only when she was well down the road did she allow herself to look back, and she was startled to see Isaac Anderson still standing there, watching her go. The next week passed in a blur of work and worry. Samuel had good days and bad days, and Delaney found herself sleeping lightly, always listening for the sound of the shotgun that would mean he had woken in one of his confused states. She worked the garden, tended the chickens, and tried to keep the cabin clean and the meals regular, all while managing tasks that would have been simple for someone with two fully functional hands, but required careful thought and adaptation for her. When Friday came again, she was almost relieved to have an excuse to go into town. Samuel's supply of tobacco had run out, and he had been irritable without it. She made the familiar journey, the mare plodding along while Delaney let her mind wander. She thought about Isaac Anderson more than she should have. There was no future in such thoughts, no point in imagining what it might be like to have a man look at her with interest rather than pity. And yet, she could not quite forget the blue of his eyes or the way he had looked at her, as if she were someone worth noticing. Tahlequah was quieter this Friday, fewer wagons on the street and fewer people milling about. Delaney made her purchases at Henderson's Mercantile, relieved when there was no sign of Isaac Anderson. She was tying her packages in the wagon when she heard her name called. "Miss Norwood." She turned to see Isaac striding toward her, his hat in his hand, his dark hair slightly mussed as if he had been running his fingers through it. Despite herself, Delaney felt her pulse quicken. "Mr. Anderson, good afternoon." "I was hoping I might see you today," he said, and there was something almost boyish in his smile. "I wanted to apologize if I made you uncomfortable last week. My mama always said I could be too forward sometimes." "You did not make me uncomfortable," Delaney lied. "I was simply in a hurry." "Well, that is good to hear. I have been working at the Patterson Ranch this week, helping with their cattle. It is good work, hard but honest. Mr. Patterson said I could stay on through the winter if I want." "That is fortunate for you." "Yes, madam, it is. I have been drifting for a while now, doing ranch work here and there. It would be nice to settle somewhere for a spell." He paused, then added, "Tahlequah seems like a good town, good people here." Delaney was not sure what to say to that, so she simply nodded. An awkward silence fell between them, and she was acutely aware of other people on the street, of Mrs. Henderson visible through the mercantile window, probably watching this exchange with great interest. "Miss Norwood, I know this is bold, but would you allow me to call on you? To come visit you and your father sometime?" The question hit Delaney like a physical blow. She stared at Isaac, searching his face for signs of mockery or jest, but found only sincere hope in his expression. "Why would you want to do that?" He looked surprised by her question. "Because I would like to get to know you better. Because you are a beautiful woman, and I have not been able to stop thinking about you since we met." Beautiful. The words seemed to hang in the air between them, impossible and precious. No one had ever called Delaney beautiful before. Pretty, perhaps, when she was younger, before the weight of caring for her father had carved worry lines around her eyes, but never beautiful. "You do not know me, Mr. Anderson. You do not know anything about me. That is why I would like to call on you to learn about you." Delaney felt panic rising in her chest. This was impossible. She could not let him court her, could not let him develop feelings for her, because the moment he discovered her secret, the moment he learned about her crippled hand, everything would change. It was better to end this now, before anyone got hurt. "I am sorry, Mr. Anderson, but I must decline. My father is not well and I do not have time for social calls. I am sure you understand." She saw the disappointment flash across his face, saw the way his shoulders dropped slightly, and felt a pang of regret so sharp it nearly took her breath away. But this was for the best. This was the only sensible course of action. "I understand," Isaac said quietly. "If you change your mind, I am staying at the boarding house on Main Street, the one above the saloon. They had a room open up earlier this week. I will not change my mind, but thank you for the offer. I hope you do well at the Patterson Ranch." She climbed into the wagon before he could say anything else, before the treacherous part of her that wanted to say yes could override her common sense. As she drove away, she did not look back, could not bear to see if he was watching her go again. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Delaney pulled off her glove and stared at her right hand in the moonlight streaming through the window. The fingers were curled inward, the thumb turned at an odd angle, the whole thing small and weak and useless. She had been born this way, the midwife had told her mother. Sometimes these things just happened. God's will, the preacher had said when Delaney was old enough to understand what made her different. She flexed the fingers, managed to straighten them slightly through concentration and effort, but they would never be normal. This hand had defined her life, had closed doors before she even knew they existed. It had kept her from normal girlhood activities, from dancing at socials where she would have had to hold a partner's hand. It had kept her from marriage, from children, from any hope of a normal future. And now it had cost her the possibility of something with Isaac Anderson, a man she barely knew but who had looked at her like she mattered. Delaney pulled the glove back on and turned her face into her pillow, refusing to let herself cry. The weeks that followed were difficult ones. Samuel continued to decline, his periods of lucidity becoming shorter and less frequent. Twice more, Delaney had to take the shotgun from him when he woke in the night, convinced their cabin was under attack. She began hiding the ammunition, giving him only a few shells at a time, and he seemed not to notice or care. The garden was failing, the last of the summer vegetables withering in the increasingly cold nights. Soon it would be winter, and Delaney was not sure how they would manage. Their savings were almost depleted, and Samuel was in no condition to work even the smallest jobs. She began making inquiries in town, discreetly asking about work she might be able to do. Mrs. Henderson mentioned that the hotel sometimes needed help with laundry, and though the pay was poor, it was something. Delaney swallowed her pride and went to speak with the hotel owner, a stern-faced man named Mr. Griffith. "Can you wring out wet sheets?" he asked bluntly, looking her up and down. "Yes, sir," Delaney lied, knowing she could manage it with difficulty, even if her right hand would be nearly useless for the task. "Can you carry heavy baskets of linens up and down stairs?" "Yes, sir." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. $3 a week. You start Monday. Be here at 6 in the morning, sharp. It was less than she had hoped for, but it was income. Delaney accepted gratefully and left the hotel feeling slightly less desperate. $3 a week would not save them, but it would buy food and keep them going a while longer. As she walked back to her wagon, she nearly collided with someone coming around the corner. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her, and she looked up into the blue eyes of Isaac Anderson. "Miss Norwood, I am sorry I was not watching where I was going. No, it was my fault. I was distracted." She stepped back, acutely aware of where his hands had been on her shoulders, feeling their warmth even through her shawl. "How have you been? I have not seen you in town for a few weeks." "I have been managing. And you? How is the work at the Patterson Ranch?" "Good. Real good, actually. Mr. Patterson has asked me to stay on permanent if I want, made me an offer to be his foreman come spring." There was pride in Isaac's voice, and Delaney felt genuinely happy for him. "That is wonderful. You must have impressed him." "I work hard. Always have." He paused, and something shifted in his expression. "Miss Norwood, I know you said you did not have time for callers, but would you at least allow me to buy you a cup of coffee? Just as friends, nothing more. I do not have many people to talk to here yet, and I enjoy your company." Delaney knew she should refuse, knew that spending time with Isaac Anderson was dangerous to her peace of mind. But she was tired and lonely, and the sincerity in his face made something in her chest ache with longing. "Just coffee," she said, "and only for a few minutes. I need to get back to my father." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "There is a little place just down the street, run by a Cherokee woman named Mrs. Swimmer. She makes the best coffee in the territory." They walked together to the small establishment, which was really just the front room of Mrs. Swimmer's house that she had converted into a gathering place. The coffee was indeed excellent, rich and dark, and served in delicate china cups that seemed at odds with the rough frontier setting. Isaac talked about his work, about the cattle and the land, about growing up in Texas, and deciding to head north looking for opportunities. Delaney found herself relaxing, sharing stories about Tahlequah, about the Cherokee community and the history of the area. She was careful to keep her right hand in her lap, the gloved fingers hidden beneath the table. "What about your family?" Isaac asked. "You mentioned your father is not well. Do you have any brothers or sisters to help you?" "No, it is just Papa and me now. My mother died 3 years ago, and I had a younger brother who died when he was just a baby, before I was born." The familiar sadness of those losses washed over her, but time had made it bearable. "Papa was fine for a while after Mama passed, but this past year he has been getting worse. He gets confused, sees things that are not there. I worry about him." "That must be hard, taking care of him on your own." "I manage," Delaney said, which was becoming her standard response to most questions about her life. "You have help with the farm, hired hands or neighbors who come by?" "No, we have a small vegetable garden, some chickens. Nothing that requires much help. Nothing that would tempt someone to see how poorly she managed physical tasks, nothing that would reveal her limitations." Isaac was quiet for a moment, studying her face. "You do everything yourself?" It was not a question, but Delaney nodded anyway. "I do what needs doing." "That is admirable, Miss Norwood, truly. But everyone needs help sometimes. There is no shame in it." His words were kind, but they made Delaney uncomfortable in a way she could not quite name. She finished her coffee and set the cup down, preparing to leave. "Thank you for the coffee, Mr. Anderson. It was very kind of you, but I really must get back now." "Of course." He stood when she did, his manners impeccable. "May I walk you to your wagon?" They walked together through the late afternoon streets, the sun beginning to sink toward the horizon and painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. At her wagon, Isaac helped her climb up, offering his hand without thinking. Delaney hesitated for only a moment before taking it with her left hand, the awkwardness of the grip immediately apparent. Isaac noticed, she could see it in his eyes, but he said nothing, simply held her hand until she was safely on the seat. "Drive careful, Miss Norwood." And if you ever need anything at all, please come find me. I mean that. Thank you, Mr. Anderson." As she drove away, Delaney found herself wondering what it would be like to need someone and actually be able to ask for help. To not have to hide and compensate and pretend everything was fine when it was falling apart. The work at the hotel laundry was brutal. Delaney showed up at 6 on Monday morning, as instructed, and quickly realized she had vastly underestimated the physical demands of the job. The other women who worked there, 3 Cherokee women and 1 white woman about Delaney's age, moved with practiced efficiency, hauling huge baskets of soiled linens, scrubbing them in enormous tubs of near-boiling water, wringing them out with powerful twists, hanging them to dry, and then carrying them back to iron. Delaney struggled to keep up. She could manage most tasks with her left hand doing the majority of the work, but wringing out the heavy, water-soaked sheets was nearly impossible. She had to stop frequently, her right hand cramping with the effort of trying to help grip, her arms shaking with exhaustion. By noon, her hands were red and raw despite the glove on her right hand, which had become soaked through. The other women watched her with a mixture of pity and irritation, their own work increasing as they had to compensate for her slowness. "First day is always hard," the white woman, whose name was Martha, said during their brief lunch break. "You will get used to it." But Delaney knew she would not get used to it, could not get used to it, because her limitations were not a matter of practice but of physical impossibility. Still, she needed the money too desperately to quit, so she pushed through the afternoon, ignoring the pain and the looks from her coworkers. When Mr. Griffith came to inspect their work at the end of the day, he took one look at the pile of sheets Delaney had managed to complete, compared it to the others, and frowned. "You are going to need to work faster, Miss Norwood. I cannot pay you the same as the others if you are not producing the same amount of work." "I will do better tomorrow, sir. See that you do." Delaney drove home in near darkness, every muscle in her body screaming. Her right hand, when she finally removed the soaked glove, was bright red and swollen, the twisted fingers looking even more deformed than usual. She had pushed them too hard, demanded too much, and now they throbbed with a pain that made her feel sick. Samuel was asleep in his chair when she entered the cabin, the shotgun across his lap. She gently took it from him and put it away, then collapsed onto her own bed without bothering to make dinner. She was asleep within minutes, the kind of exhausted, dreamless sleep that came from pushing the body beyond its limits. The pattern repeated for the rest of the week. Each morning, Delaney dragged herself to the hotel, worked until her hands bled and her back felt like it might break, received criticism from Mr. Griffith, and drove home in the dark. By Friday, she knew it was hopeless. Even working as hard as she possibly could, she was producing maybe half of what the other women managed, and her right hand was so damaged from the constant strain that she could barely move the fingers at all. Mr. Griffith called her into his office at the end of her shift on Friday. "Miss Norwood, this arrangement is not working out. I am sorry, but I am going to have to let you go. I will pay you for this week, but do not come back on Monday." Delaney had known it was coming, but the words still hit her like a fist to the stomach. "Please, Mr. Griffith, I will work harder. I will come in earlier, stay later. I need this job. I am sorry, but my mind is made up. You are a hard worker, I can see that, but you simply cannot keep up with the demands of the position." There was nothing more to say. Delaney took her $3 in wages, walked out of the hotel with her head held high, and made it all the way to her wagon before the tears started. She sat in the driver's seat and cried, deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place of desperation and fear. What was she going to do now? How were they going to survive the winter? "Miss Norwood," The voice made her jump, and she looked up to see Isaac Anderson standing beside the wagon, his face creased with concern. Of all the people to witness her breakdown, it had to be him. "Are you all right? What happened?" "Nothing. I am fine." She wiped at her face with her left hand, trying to compose herself. "You are crying. You are not fine." He stepped closer, and in the lamplight from the street, she could see genuine worry in his blue eyes. "Please tell me what is wrong. Maybe I can help." "You cannot help. No one can help." The words came out bitter, and Delaney hated the weakness in her voice. "Let me try. Please." And maybe it was the exhaustion or the desperation or simply the fact that she could not carry the weight alone anymore, but Delaney found herself talking. The words poured out of her, about Samuel's decline, about the failed farm, about losing the job at the hotel, about the fear that they would not survive the winter. She did not tell him about her hand, could not bring herself to reveal that final humiliation, but she told him everything else. Isaac listened without interrupting, his face growing more somber as the full weight of her situation became clear. When she finally ran out of words, he was quiet for a long moment. "Miss Norwood, Delaney, please listen to me. You are not alone in this. I know we have not known each other long, but I care about you, and I want to help. I cannot accept charity. It would not be charity. It would be friends helping each other. Or neighbors, at least. Let me come out to your farm this weekend. Let me see what needs doing, what I can help with. Please." Delaney knew she should refuse, knew that letting Isaac into her life was dangerous, but she was so tired, so completely worn down that she did not have the strength to say no. "All right. Sunday afternoon if you want. We live about 5 miles west of town, the old Norwood place. Anyone can give you directions." "I will be there," Isaac promised. "And Delaney, it is going to be all right. We will figure something out." She wanted to believe him, wanted to have faith that things could get better. But as she drove home through the dark, her crippled hand throbbing with pain, she could not quite manage hope. Sunday afternoon arrived cold and clear, the first real hint of winter in the air. Delaney spent the morning cleaning the cabin, trying to make it presentable, all while Samuel dozed in his chair, oblivious to her preparations. She changed into her better dress, the dark blue one with the high collar and long sleeves that covered her gloves completely and braided her hair neatly. When she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching, her heart began to pound. She opened the door to see Isaac Anderson riding up on a large bay horse, and even she had to admit he made a striking figure. He dismounted smoothly and tied the horse to the porch rail, then walked toward her with his hat in his hand. "Miss Norwood, thank you for letting me come. Mr. Anderson, welcome to our home." She invited him inside where Samuel had woken and was eyeing the stranger with suspicion. "Papa, this is Mr. Isaac Anderson. He works at the Patterson Ranch. He has come to visit." "Anderson, eh?" Samuel studied Isaac with watery eyes. "I knew an Anderson once. Died in the war." "I am sorry to hear that, sir," Isaac said respectfully. "I lost my own father in the war. It was a hard time." Something in Isaac's tone must have satisfied Samuel because he nodded and settled back in his chair. "Sit down, boy. Tell me about yourself." For the next hour, Delaney watched as Isaac talked with her father, handling Samuel's occasional confusion with patience and grace. He spoke of his work, his travels, his hopes for the future, and Samuel responded with stories from his own past, some real and some clearly embellished by time and memory. When Samuel finally dozed off again, Isaac turned to Delaney. "May I see your land, see what you are working with here?" They walked outside together, and Delaney showed him the small garden, now mostly harvested and preparing for winter, the chicken coop with its dwindling flock, the barn that needed repairs she could not afford to make. Isaac took it all in silently, his expression thoughtful. "Your fence line over there is coming down," he observed, pointing to the western edge of the property. "And your barn roof is going to leak come the first snow. I know, I just have not had the time or the money to fix things. What if I helped? I could come out on Sundays, my day off from the ranch. We could get this place back in working order. Mr. Anderson, I cannot ask you to do that. You are not asking. I am offering." He turned to face her fully, and the sincerity in his eyes made her throat tight. "Delaney, I know you are proud. I know you do not like accepting help, but there is no shame in needing support sometimes. We are meant to help each other in this life. Why would you do this for me? For us?" Isaac was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because I care about you. I have cared about you since the first moment I saw you in Henderson's Mercantile. I know you do not want courting, and I respect that. But I can still be your friend. I can still help." Delaney felt tears threatening again and blinked them back fiercely. "I do not understand you, Mr. Anderson. I do not understand why you would waste your time on someone like me." "Someone like you?" He looked genuinely confused. "Delaney, you are one of the strongest people I have ever met. You are caring for your father alone, running a farm alone, doing everything you can to survive. That is not someone to look down on. That is someone to admire." If only he knew the truth. If only he could see beneath the glove, see the weakness that defined her, he would not think her strong. But Delaney could not bring herself to tell him, could not bear to see his expression change from admiration to pity. "All right," she said quietly. "If you want to help, I would be grateful, but I insist on paying you back somehow. I could cook for you or mend your clothes or something." "Your company is payment enough," Isaac said simply. "Now show me where you keep your tools. I can at least start on that fence today." They worked together through the afternoon. Or rather, Isaac worked while Delaney tried to help in small ways, holding boards steady with her left hand while he hammered, bringing him water when he was thirsty. She was acutely aware of keeping her right hand hidden, of making sure he never saw how little use it was. As the sun began to set, Isaac stepped back to admire the repaired fence line. "That should hold through the winter. Next week, I will tackle the barn roof." "Thank you, Mr. Anderson." "Truly?" "Isaac, please call me Isaac, only if you call me Delaney." His smile was warm enough to chase away the evening chill. "Deal." The following weeks fell into a pattern. Every Sunday, Isaac would ride out to the Norwood farm and spend the day making repairs, improving the property and visiting with Samuel and Delaney. The barn roof was patched, the chicken coop reinforced, the sagging porch steps replaced. Slowly, steadily, the farm began to look less desperate and more like a place where people lived with dignity. During the week, Delaney found herself thinking about Isaac constantly. She replayed their conversations in her mind, remembered the way he laughed at her small jokes, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. She was falling in love with him, she realized with a mixture of joy and dread. Falling in love with a man who could never be hers, because the moment he learned her secret, everything would change. She became even more careful about her glove, making sure it was always in place, always concealing. She developed new strategies for hiding her limitations when Isaac was around, finding excuses to not help with tasks that would require two strong hands, positioning herself so her right side was always turned away from him. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance, but she told herself it was necessary. Just a little longer, she thought. Just a little while more of this happiness before reality came crashing down. November arrived with the first real snow, a light dusting that turned the Oklahoma hills white and made the world seem clean and new. Isaac had brought supplies for Delaney to make Thanksgiving dinner, insisting it was not charity but a contribution since he would be eating with them. I have not had a proper Thanksgiving in years, he admitted as they sat around the small table in the cabin, plates laden with turkey and vegetables and cornbread. This is wonderful, Delaney, thank you. You brought most of it. I just cooked it. And you cooked it beautifully. Even Samuel seemed more lucid that day, eating with real appetite and carrying on relatively coherent conversation. For a few hours, they felt like a real family, like people who belonged together, and Delaney allowed herself to pretend that this could be her life. After dinner, while Samuel napped, Isaac and Delaney sat together on the porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets and watching the sun set over the snowy landscape. I have been thinking, Isaac said slowly. The Patterson Ranch is doing well, and Mr. Patterson has officially made me foreman. It comes with better pay and a small house on the property. I will be moving out of the boarding house next week. That is wonderful, Isaac. You must be so pleased. I am. But it also made me think about the future, about what I want my life to look like. He turned to look at her, and there was something intense in his gaze that made Delaney's heart race. Delaney, I know I said I would just be your friend, and I have tried to respect your wishes, but I need you to know that my feelings go deeper than friendship. Isaac, please do not. Let me finish, please. He took a breath. I am in love with you, Delaney Norwood. I think I have been since the day I met you. And I know you have responsibilities. I know your life is complicated, but I want to be part of it. I want to help you care for your father. I want to wake up every morning knowing I get to see you. I want to build a future together. Delaney felt like she could not breathe. This was everything she wanted and everything she could not have, all wrapped up in one impossible moment. You do not know what you are saying. You do not know me, not really. Then let me know you, let me in, Delaney. Stop holding me at arm's length. I cannot. The words came out choked, desperate. Isaac, you do not understand. I am not who you think I am. Then tell me who you are. Show me. And maybe it was the emotion in his voice, or the love shining in his eyes, or simply the fact that she could not carry the secret alone anymore. But Delaney felt something break inside her. Slowly, hands shaking, she began to pull off her right glove. There is something you need to see. Something I have been hiding from you. She pulled the glove completely off and held out her hand, pale and twisted in the fading light. The fingers curled inward, the muscles atrophied, the whole thing small and weak and deformed. She could not look at Isaac's face, could not bear to see his reaction, so she stared at her own hand as tears began to slide down her cheeks. This is who I am. This is what I have been hiding. I was born like this, and it will never be normal. I can barely use it, Isaac. I cannot grip things properly, cannot do half the tasks a normal woman can do. That is why I lost the job at the hotel. That is why I have always been alone. Because what man would want a wife who is crippled? The silence stretched out, painful and suffocating. Delaney waited for him to stand up, to make an excuse to leave, to look at her with pity or disgust. But instead, she felt Isaac's hand close gently around her wrist. Look at me, Delaney. She forced herself to meet his eyes, bracing for rejection. But what she saw there was not pity or revulsion. It was tenderness, and something deeper that made her breath catch. Slowly, carefully, Isaac lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her twisted fingers. Then another to her palm and another to her wrist. His lips were warm against her skin, and his eyes never left hers. It is part of you, he said softly. And I love every part of you. This does not change anything, Delaney. If anything, it makes me love you more, because I know how hard you have been fighting, how much strength it takes to do what you do every day. But I cannot do things a normal wife could do. I cannot work like other women. I am broken. You are not broken. You are perfect exactly as you are. He kissed her hand again, and Delaney felt something inside her chest crack open, years of shame and fear spilling out. Do you hear me? You are perfect." The tears were falling freely now, years of grief and loneliness pouring out. Isaac pulled her into his arms, and she buried her face against his chest, sobbing while he held her and whispered reassurances into her hair. "I love you," she managed to say between sobs. "I love you so much, Isaac, but I am so afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you will realize I am not enough, that you will regret choosing me." Isaac pulled back enough to look into her face, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Delaney Norwood, you are more than enough. You are everything I never knew I was looking for. And I am going to spend every day for the rest of my life proving to you that you are worthy of love, exactly as you are." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Delaney felt something shift inside her, some fundamental understanding that she was allowed to be loved, that she was allowed to be happy. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the sun had fully set and stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Marry me," Isaac said, and it was not quite a question. "Are you sure? Are you absolutely certain?" "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." "Marry me, Delaney. Let me take care of you and your father. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved." "Yes," she whispered, and then louder, with more certainty. "Yes, Isaac, I will marry you." His whoop of joy was loud enough to wake Samuel, who appeared in the doorway looking confused and irritable. But when Isaac explained that he had just proposed, and Delaney had accepted, even Samuel's weathered face creased into something like a smile. "About time somebody took her off my hands," he grumbled, but there was affection in his voice. "You are a good man, Anderson. You will do right by her." "I will, sir. I promise you that." They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Tahlequah. Mrs. Henderson cried happy tears and insisted on providing flowers from her greenhouse. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson attended, along with several of Isaac's friends from the ranch. Even Samuel had a good day, walking Delaney down the short aisle with something like pride in his bearing. Delaney wore her best dress and a new pair of gloves, cream-colored lace that Isaac had bought for her in town. But when the preacher asked them to join hands for the vows, she pulled off the right glove without hesitation. Isaac took her crippled hand in both of his and held it like it was made of precious metal. "I take you, Delaney Norwood, to be my wife," he said, his voice strong and clear. "In sickness and in health, in good times and bad. I promise to love every part of you, to honor you, and to cherish you all the days of my life." When it was her turn, Delaney's voice shook but held steady. "I take you, Isaac Anderson, to be my husband. I promise to love you, to trust you, and to build a life with you. Thank you for seeing me, all of me, and loving me anyway." "Not anyway," Isaac corrected softly, before the preacher could finish the ceremony. "Thank you for letting me love you because of who you are, not despite it." The preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and when Isaac kissed her, Delaney felt like she was finally, truly home. They moved into the small house on the Patterson ranch, and true to his word, Isaac brought Samuel with them. They converted one of the bedrooms into a space for him, comfortable and safe, where he could live out his remaining days with dignity. Isaac hired a young Cherokee man named Tom to help watch Samuel during the days when both he and Delaney were busy, and the arrangement worked well. Delaney discovered that being a foreman's wife came with its own set of responsibilities, but they were ones she could manage. She kept house, cooked meals for the ranch hands during busy seasons, and learned to manage accounts and correspondence with her left hand, and careful use of her right when needed. No one at the ranch commented on her crippled hand, and if they noticed, they kept it to themselves out of respect for Isaac. More importantly, Isaac never made her feel less than for her limitations. When she struggled with a task, he helped without making it seem like charity. When she managed something difficult, he praised her without condescension. Slowly, Delaney began to see herself through his eyes, not as broken or deficient, but as capable and strong in her own way. The first time she left her glove off in public was at a church social 3 months after their wedding. She was helping to serve punch, managing the ladle in her left hand while her bare right hand rested on the table, visible to anyone who looked. She felt exposed and vulnerable, waiting for someone to stare or whisper. But Isaac stood beside her, proud and loving, and when he took her right hand and raised it to his lips in front of everyone, kissing it tenderly, Delaney felt the last of her shame fall away. She was Isaac Anderson's wife, and he loved her, and that was enough. Samuel Norwood passed away peacefully in his sleep on a cold night in February. They buried him in the small cemetery outside Tahlequah, and Delaney grieved deeply but without regret. He had been cared for at the end, had been treated with respect and kindness, and that was all anyone could ask for. He was a good man before the confusion took him, Isaac said as they stood by the grave after the funeral. And he raised an incredible daughter. I wish I could have known him when he was well. He liked you, Delaney said, leaning into her husband's warmth. Even through the confusion, I think he knew you were good for me. We were good for each other. That spring, Delaney discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She confided her fears to Isaac one night as they lay in bed, her crippled hand resting on her still flat stomach. What if our baby has something wrong with them? What if they have a hand like mine, or something worse? Isaac covered her hand with his own, his touch gentle. Then we will love them exactly as they are, just like I love you, and we will teach them that they are perfect and worthy and capable of anything they set their mind to, just like their mother. I am afraid I will not be able to care for a baby properly. What if I cannot hold them right, or change their clothes, or do all the things a mother needs to do? Then we will figure it out together. Delaney, you are going to be an amazing mother. You are patient and loving and strong. This baby is lucky to have you. Their daughter was born in November, a year and a day after their first Thanksgiving together. She came into the world screaming and perfect, with 10 tiny fingers and 10 tiny toes, all perfectly formed. They named her Sarah, after Delaney's mother, and she had Isaac's blue eyes and Delaney's brown hair. Caring for an infant with one weak hand was challenging, but Delaney managed with determination and creativity. She learned to nurse Sarah while using her left arm for support, to change diapers with efficient one-handed motions, to dress her daughter in clothes she had modified with extra ties instead of difficult buttons. Isaac helped whenever he was home, but he also let Delaney find her own way, understanding that she needed to prove to herself that she could do this. As Sarah grew from an infant to a toddler, she showed no awareness that there was anything different about her mother's hand. She would grab both of Delaney's hands with equal enthusiasm, press sticky kisses to both palms without distinction. To Sarah, her mother was just Mama, perfect and whole and exactly right. The Patterson Ranch prospered under Isaac's management, and their little family prospered with it. 2 years after Sarah was born, a son arrived, a robust baby they named James after Isaac's father. He had his mother's brown eyes and his father's strong build, and from the moment he could crawl, he was following Isaac around the ranch like a devoted shadow. Delaney watched her husband teach their son to ride, to rope, to care for animals, and felt a contentment so deep it sometimes brought tears to her eyes. This life, this family, this love, it was more than she had ever dreamed possible. One evening, when Sarah was 5 and James was 3, the family sat together on the porch of their house watching the sunset paint the Oklahoma sky in brilliant colors. Sarah was curled up in Delaney's lap, playing with her mother's hands, tracing the lines on both palms with gentle fingers. "Mama, why is this hand different?" Sarah asked, holding up Delaney's right hand with innocent curiosity. Delaney felt Isaac's eyes on her, supportive but letting her answer in her own way. She took a breath and chose her words carefully. "I was born with this hand a little different from most people's hands. It does not work quite the same way, but it is part of who I am. Does it hurt? Sometimes a little, but mostly I am used to it." Sarah studied the hand seriously, then kissed it, just as she had seen her father do countless times. "I like your hand, Mama. It is special." "That is right," Isaac said, reaching over to ruffle Sarah's hair. "Your mama is special and every part of her is perfect." James, not wanting to be left out, crawled over and grabbed Delaney's right hand, squeezing it with his small, strong fingers. "Mama's hand," he declared possessively. Delaney looked at her family, at her beautiful children who saw no flaw in her, at her husband who loved her with a depth that still took her breath away, and felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. "Yes," she said softly, "Mama's hand." The years passed in the way they do when life is good, each season flowing into the next with work and love and laughter. The ranch continued to thrive, and Isaac's reputation as a fair and skilled foreman grew. Mr. Patterson, now elderly and without children of his own, began to talk about selling the ranch to Isaac when he retired, an opportunity that would have been unimaginable to the drifting cowboy who rode into Tahlequah all those years ago. Delaney became known in the community as someone who would help anyone in need, despite, or perhaps because of her own challenges. She had a particular soft spot for people who felt different or inadequate, and she was often found counseling young women who came to her with their own struggles and fears. "You taught me that being different does not mean being less," one young woman said to her after Delaney had helped her find work despite a severe limp from childhood illness. "You showed me that I can still have a good life." "Everyone deserves a good life," Delaney told her. "Everyone deserves to be loved and valued for who they are. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Delaney with a trip to Fort Smith, Arkansas, just the two of them while Mrs. Patterson watched the children. It was the first time they had been alone together for more than a few hours since Sarah was born, and Delaney felt almost giddy with the freedom of it. They stayed in a proper hotel, ate in nice restaurants, and walked through the growing town hand in hand, Delaney's right hand bare and unashamed in Isaac's grip. On their last evening, they sat by the Arkansas River, watching the water flow past, reflecting the colors of the sunset. "Do you remember the first time we met?" Isaac asked, his arm around her shoulders. "At Henderson's Mercantile. You offered to carry my packages, and I was terrified you would notice my hand. I did notice something was different. The way you kept your right hand hidden, the way you only used your left, but I did not understand why until much later." He kissed her temple. "I am glad you trusted me enough to show me. I am glad you let me love you. I am glad you saw past the fear and the shame. I am glad you showed me I was worth loving. You were always worth loving, Delaney. I just helped you see what was already true." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the river and listening to the sounds of the town settling in for the night. Finally, Delaney spoke again. "Do you ever regret it? Marrying me, I mean. Your life might have been easier with someone else, someone without limitations." Isaac turned to look at her, his blue eyes serious. "Never. Not for one single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Delaney Anderson. You and our children are my whole world. I would not change anything about our life together. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, they made us who we are. Delaney leaned into him, breathing in the familiar scent of him, feeling the solid warmth of his body against hers. "I love you, Isaac Anderson, more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. I love you too, always and forever, exactly as you are." When they returned home, Sarah and James greeted them with wild enthusiasm, both children trying to talk at once about everything they had done while their parents were away. That night, as Delaney tucked them into bed, Sarah reached out and took her mother's right hand, holding it against her cheek. "I missed this hand, Mama. You missed my hand." "Uh-huh. It is softer than your other hand, and I like how the fingers curl. It is like a special mama hand that only we get to hold." Delaney felt tears prick her eyes. Her daughter, her beautiful, perfect daughter, found something to love even in the thing Delaney had spent most of her life hating about herself. "I love you, Sarah girl. I love you too, Mama. Both of your hands." As Delaney closed the door to the children's room and walked back to where Isaac was waiting for her, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a frightened young woman hiding behind gloves and shame, to a wife and mother who could stand tall in her own skin, it had been a long road, but every step had been worth it. Isaac looked up as she entered their bedroom, his eyes warm with love and welcome. "Come here, wife." She went to him, both hands outstretched, and he took them both, the strong left and the crippled right, holding them with equal tenderness. "You know what I see when I look at these hands?" he asked. "What?" "I see strength, I see capability. I see the hands of a woman who has worked hard and loved hard and built a beautiful life despite every obstacle. I see the hands I want to hold for the rest of my days. They are just hands, Isaac." "No," he said, kissing first her left hand, then her right. "They are your hands. And that makes them extraordinary." The years continued to unfold, bringing new challenges and new joys. Sarah grew into a bright, compassionate young woman who wanted to be a teacher. James became a skilled rancher, learning everything he could from his father. When Mr. Patterson finally did retire and sell the ranch to Isaac and Delaney, their family became established pillars of the community, known for their fairness, generosity, and the visible love they shared. Delaney never wore gloves again, except when the weather demanded it for warmth. She worked alongside Isaac when the ranch needed extra hands, managed their growing household with capable efficiency, and served as a living example that physical differences did not define a person's worth or capability. Younger women in the community, especially those with their own challenges or differences, sought her out for advice and encouragement. Delaney welcomed them all, sharing her story honestly, telling them about the years of shame and fear, about meeting Isaac, about learning to love herself through being loved by him. "But what if no one wants to marry me because I am different?" one young woman asked, showing Delaney a birthmark that covered half her face. "Then they are not the right person for you," Delaney said firmly. "The right person will love you not despite your differences, but because they are part of what makes you who you are. My husband kisses my crippled hand every single day. He tells me it is beautiful. That is the kind of love you should wait for, the kind that sees all of you and celebrates all of you. Did you believe him when he first said you were beautiful?" Delaney thought about that first day in Tahlequah, about the years of self-doubt and shame, about the moment she finally took off her glove and showed Isaac the truth of herself. Not at first, but he kept saying it, kept showing it, until eventually I started to believe it too. That is what real love does. It changes how you see yourself by reflecting back your worth until you can finally see it for yourself. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Delaney again, this time with a family party attended by friends from all over the territory. The ranch house, which they had expanded over the years, was full of laughter and music and good food. Sarah, now 15, played piano while James, 13, tried to convince his father to let him demonstrate his roping skills in the house. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Isaac stood up and tapped his glass for attention. "I just want to say a few words before everyone leaves. 20 years ago, I rode into Tahlequah looking for work and found so much more. I found the love of my life, though it took me a while to convince her to let me love her." Delaney felt her cheeks heat as everyone laughed and looked at her with affection. "Delaney taught me that strength comes in many forms," Isaac continued. "That real courage is not about being fearless, but about facing your fears and living authentically anyway. She taught me about grace, about resilience, about the power of accepting yourself and others exactly as they are. She made me a better man, a better father, and gave me a life richer than I ever imagined possible." He crossed to where Delaney sat and took her right hand, raising it high enough for everyone to see, just as he had done at that church social so many years ago. "This hand," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "represents everything I love about my wife. Her strength, her vulnerability, her uniqueness, her courage. It is part of her, and I love every part of her with my whole heart." He kissed her hand, and Delaney saw several women in the crowd wipe tears from their eyes. Sarah was openly crying, and even James looked moved, though he tried to hide it. "Thank you, Delaney Anderson, for 20 years of love and partnership. Thank you for trusting me with your heart. Thank you for our beautiful children and our beautiful life. Here is to 20 more years, and then 20 more after that." Everyone raised their glasses in a toast, and Delaney stood to embrace her husband, feeling the warmth of his arms around her and the love of their community surrounding them. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "Thank you for seeing me." "I love you," he whispered back. "Thank you for letting me." As the years rolled on into decades, Isaac and Delaney became the couple that other couples aspired to be. They weathered difficulties together, including a drought that nearly ruined the ranch, an outbreak of illness that struck the community, and the normal challenges that come with raising children into adulthood. But through it all, their love remained constant, a foundation that could not be shaken. Sarah eventually did become a teacher, opening a small school in Tahlequah where she taught not just reading and arithmetic, but also lessons about acceptance and seeing the worth in every person. She married a kind man named Peter who worked at the bank, and they gave Delaney and Isaac 4 grandchildren who called them Nana and Papa, and climbed all over them with the enthusiastic affection of the very young. James took over the day-to-day running of the ranch as Isaac grew older, proving himself to be as fair and skilled as his father. He married a Cherokee woman named Rebecca who fit seamlessly into the family and bore them 3 more grandchildren. The ranch house, already expanded, grew even larger to accommodate family gatherings that grew more numerous and more joyous with each passing year. On their 40th wedding anniversary, Isaac and Delaney sat together on the porch of the house they had built together, watching the sun set over land they now owned outright, surrounded by children and grandchildren and the life they had created. "You remember the day we met?" Delaney asked, as she often did when they sat like this. "Every detail," Isaac replied, as he always did. "You were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and you would not shake my hand. I was terrified you would feel my hand and know. And when you finally did show me, I fell even more in love with you. That moment changed my life. When you kissed my hand and said it was part of me, said you loved me exactly as I was, something broke open inside me. All those years of shame and hiding, they just fell away." Isaac took her right hand, as he had done thousands of times over the decades, and pressed it to his lips. The hand was more gnarled now with age, the fingers even more curled, but to him it was still the most precious thing he had ever held. "This hand built a life," he said softly. "It raised our children, managed our home, comforted people in need, showed others that different does not mean less. This hand changed the world in small, important ways. It changed my world in every way that matters. We changed each other's worlds. Yes, we did." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands and watching their grandchildren play in the yard, while Sarah and James supervised with the patient exasperation of parents everywhere. The air was warm with the promise of summer, and the land stretched out before them, green and prosperous and home. "No regrets?" Delaney asked, though she knew the answer. "Not a single one. You? Only that I wasted so many years being ashamed of myself before I met you. You were not wasting years. You were becoming the person you needed to be to accept love when it came. Everything happened exactly as it was meant to." Sarah walked over to them, carrying her youngest child, a 2-year-old girl named Delaney after her grandmother. Little Delaney reached out for her nana, and the older Delaney took her carefully, settling the child on her lap. "Look, Mama," Sarah said softly. "She always reaches for your right hand first. Did you notice that?" Delaney looked down to see that Sarah was right. Her little namesake was holding onto her crippled hand with both of her own small hands, examining it with the serious concentration that toddlers brought to everything. "Nana hand," the little girl declared, then kissed it sloppily. Delaney felt tears spring to her eyes, as they so often did these days when confronted with the unexpected blessings of her life. This child, this perfect little human, found nothing wrong with the hand that Delaney had hidden in shame for so many years. To her, it was just Nana's hand, worthy of holding and kissing and treasuring. "She's going to grow up knowing that differences are normal," Sarah said, watching her daughter with love. "That bodies come in all forms and all of them are valuable. Because you taught me that, Mama, and I am teaching her." "Your mother taught me that," Delaney said, looking at Isaac. "Or rather, she let me learn it by loving me so completely that I had no choice but to start loving myself." James joined them on the porch, his own children trailing behind him. "Are you two getting sentimental again? Papa, you promised you would show me that new saddle you ordered." "I am old," Isaac said with a grin. "I am allowed to get sentimental with my wife whenever I want, but come on, let me show you that saddle. It is a beauty." As the men walked off toward the barn, Delaney sat with her daughters and granddaughters, little Delaney still clutching her crippled hand, and felt a sense of completion so profound it was almost overwhelming. She had started life believing she was broken, had spent years hiding and compensating and feeling less than. But Isaac had seen her, really seen her, and had loved what he saw so fiercely that it changed everything. "Mama," Sarah said softly, "thank you for being brave enough to let Papa in. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like. I would not be who I am without the example you and Papa set. Your father was the brave one. He loved me when I could not love myself. You were brave too. It takes courage to accept love when you have been taught you do not deserve it." Delaney thought about that, about the years of shame and fear, about the moment she pulled off her glove and showed Isaac the truth of herself, about every day since then when she had chosen to live openly and authentically instead of hiding. "Maybe we were both brave," she said finally. "Maybe love makes us all a little braver than we think we can be." The sun had fully set now, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The temperature was dropping as it did in the evenings, even in summer, and Rebecca came to collect the children for bedtime routines. The ranch house glowed with warm light, and Delaney could see Isaac through the window, laughing at something James had said. That night, As they prepared for bed in the room they had shared for 40 years, Isaac helped Delaney with the buttons on her dress that her fingers could not quite manage anymore. It was a ritual they had performed thousands of times, neither of them commenting on it, just part of the comfortable dance of long marriage. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if we had not met?" Delaney asked as she brushed out her hair, now more silver than brown. "No," Isaac said simply, "because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. You are woven into every part of who I am. I think about it sometimes, about that scared young woman who drove into town with her hand hidden and her heart closed. About what would have happened to her if you had not been there, if you had not been so persistent and patient and loving. She would have found her way eventually. She was stronger than she knew, maybe. But I am glad I did not have to find out. I am glad I had you to walk beside me." They climbed into bed, and Isaac pulled Delaney close, her back to his chest, his arms around her in the position they had slept in for 4 decades. She took his hand and pressed it to her heart, feeling the steady beat beneath his palm. "I love you, Delaney Anderson. I have loved you for 40 years, and I will love you until I take my last breath and beyond. I love you too, Isaac. You are my miracle. You are the gift I never thought I would receive. You are the miracle," he murmured against her hair. "You and your strength and your courage and your beautiful, perfect hands. Both of them." Delaney smiled in the darkness, holding the hand of the man who had changed her life by seeing her, truly seeing her, and loving what he saw. She thought about young Delaney, the woman who had hidden beneath gloves and shame, and wished she could go back and tell her that everything would be all right. That love was coming, real love that would ask nothing of her but to be herself. That she would have children and grandchildren and a life so full and rich, it would make all the years of loneliness worthwhile. But she could not go back, could only move forward, cherishing each day with the man who had kissed her crippled hand and said it was part of her. The man who had taught her that she was worthy of love exactly as she was. As she drifted off to sleep, safe and warm in Isaac's arms, Delaney sent up a prayer of gratitude for the life she had been given, for the love that had transformed her, for the family that surrounded her with acceptance and joy. She had been so wrong about herself for so many years, had believed she was too broken to be loved. But Isaac had shown her the truth that had been waiting all along. She was not broken. She had never been broken. She was exactly who she was meant to be, and that was enough. That had always been enough. The next morning dawned clear and bright, full of the promise of another day on the ranch they loved. Delaney woke to find Isaac already up, standing at the window and looking out over their land. She joined him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Just counting my blessings. 40 years of waking up next to you, 2 incredible children who have become amazing adults, 7 grandchildren who will carry our legacy forward. Land that is prosperous and healthy, friends and community who care about us. It is more than any man deserves. You deserve every bit of it. You worked hard for all of this. We worked hard for it, together." Delaney looked down at her hands, both of them visible in the morning light. The left was strong and capable, marked with the calluses of a life of work. The right was twisted and weak, the fingers curled and the muscles atrophied. Both of them told the story of who she was. "You know what I realized?" she said softly. "I spent so many years hating this hand, wishing it was different, thinking it made me less than. But this hand is part of what brought us together. If I had been perfect, if I had not been hiding something, maybe we would have had a different story. Maybe I would not have been as cautious. Maybe you would not have had to be so persistent. This hand shaped who I am, and who I am is who you fell in love with." Isaac took her right hand and kissed it, as he had done countless times before. Every part of you is part of why I love you. The strong parts and the vulnerable parts, the easy parts and the difficult parts. All of it together makes you who you are, and who you are is extraordinary. From outside, they heard the sound of grandchildren arriving, voices raised in excitement. It was Saturday, which meant the whole family gathered for breakfast together, a tradition they had started years ago and maintained faithfully. "Come on," Isaac said, tugging her toward the door. "Our family awaits." Delaney followed him, both hands free and unashamed, ready to greet another day of the beautiful life they had built together. As she helped prepare breakfast, surrounded by the chatter of children and the warmth of family, she thought about all the years that had led to this moment. The pain and the shame, the fear and the doubt, all of it had been worth it to arrive here, at this place of acceptance and love. Sarah caught her eye across the crowded kitchen and smiled, and Delaney smiled back. A smile full of joy and contentment and the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. Little Delaney toddled over and held up her arms to be picked up, and when Delaney lifted her, the child immediately grabbed her right hand and held it against her soft cheek. "Love Nana hand," the little girl said clearly, and Delaney felt her heart might burst with happiness. "I love you too, sweet girl." Isaac appeared at her side, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Beautiful," he murmured, and she knew he meant not just their granddaughter, but this moment, this life, this family they had created together. "Yes," Delaney agreed, "so very beautiful." And as the morning sun streamed through the windows of their home, warming the faces of the people she loved most in the world, Delaney Norwood Anderson finally, completely, truly believed it. Not just about the moment or the day or the life they had built, but about herself. She was beautiful, crippled hand and all. She was worthy of love and had been all along. She was exactly who she was meant to be, and that was the greatest gift Isaac had given her, greater than the home or the security or even the family they had created together. He had given her the ability to see herself through eyes of love instead of eyes of shame. He had taught her that she was enough, exactly as she was. The years ahead would bring more changes, more challenges, more joys and sorrows as life always did. There would be hard times and easy times, laughter and tears, beginnings and endings. But through it all, Delaney knew she would face everything with Isaac by her side, her hand in his, both of her hands loved and valued exactly as they were. And really, what more could anyone ask for than to be seen, truly seen, and loved for exactly who they were? That was the miracle of their love story, not that Isaac had accepted her despite her differences, but that he had celebrated her because of them. He had shown her that the things she had spent a lifetime hiding were actually part of what made her special, part of what made her herself. As the family sat down to breakfast together, the table crowded and noisy and full of life, Delaney looked around at the faces of the people she loved and felt such profound gratitude it almost overwhelmed her. This was her life. This was her legacy. Not the ranch or the land or the material things they had accumulated, but this love that flowed between all of them, uniting them into something stronger than any individual could be alone. She caught Isaac's eye across the table, and he winked at her, that same playful wink that had made her heart flutter 40 years ago. She winked back, feeling young and free and entirely herself. Later, when the grandchildren had been taken home and the house was quiet again, Delaney and Isaac sat on their porch as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. It was their favorite time of day, these quiet moments together when they could simply be. "Do you remember what you said to me the first time you saw my hand?" Delaney asked. "The real first time when I finally showed you I said it was part of you," Isaac replied, "and that I loved every part of you." Those words changed my life. They changed everything. Because for the first time, someone looked at the thing I hated most about myself and saw it as worthy of love. You gave me permission to stop hiding, to stop being ashamed. You gave yourself permission, Isaac corrected gently. I just helped you see what was already true. You were always worthy of love, Delaney, always. She leaned her head on his shoulder, comfortable and content. I am so grateful for you, for us, for this life we built together. Me too, love, me too. They sat in silence as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, as it had done thousands of times before, and would do thousands of times again. The land stretched out before them, fertile and productive, a testament to years of hard work and dedication. But more than that, it was home. A place where they belonged, where they were accepted, where they could be completely and authentically themselves. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Delaney thought about legacy, about what they would leave behind when their time on this earth was done. It would not be the ranch or the house or any physical thing. It would be the love they had shared, the example they had set, the lesson that everyone deserves to be loved exactly as they are. Their children had learned it. Their grandchildren were learning it. And through them, that lesson would spread outward, touching more lives, changing more hearts, making the world just a little bit kinder and more accepting. That was their true legacy. Not land or money or material success, but love. Love that saw past differences to the essential humanity of every person. Love that celebrated uniqueness instead of demanding conformity. Love that said, "You are enough exactly as you are." "Thank you," Delaney whispered into the growing darkness. "For what?" Isaac asked. "For everything. For seeing me, for loving me, for giving me a life I never thought possible, for teaching me to love myself, for all of it." Isaac pulled her closer, and she felt him press a kiss to the top of her head. "Thank you for letting me. Thank you for being brave enough to show me who you really were. Thank you for trusting me with your heart. Thank you for 40 years of love and partnership and joy. Thank you for being exactly who you are." And there, on the porch of their home, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived and a love well shared, Delaney Norwood Anderson finally understood the full truth of what Isaac had been trying to tell her all along. She was not broken. She had never been broken. Her crippled hand was not a flaw or a deficiency or something to be ashamed of. It was simply part of her, one piece of the complex, beautiful whole that made her who she was, and who she was loved. Completely, perfectly, eternally loved. That was the end of the story, but it was also just the beginning. Because love like theirs did not end with death or time or any earthly boundary. It lived on in the hearts of their children and grandchildren, in the example they had set, in the lives they had touched. It lived on in every person who learned from their story that they, too, were worthy of love exactly as they were. The cowboy had kissed her crippled hand and said it was part of her. And in doing so, he had given her the greatest gift anyone could give, the gift of being truly seen and truly loved. And that gift, that precious, perfect gift, would echo forward through generations, a testament to the transformative power of love that accepts, celebrates, and cherishes every part of the beloved. As the last light faded from the sky and the first stars blazed bright in the darkness, Isaac and Delaney sat together in perfect peace, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in rhythm, their souls entwined after 4 decades of shared life. And if you listened carefully, you might have heard them whisper the words that had sustained them through all those years. "I love you. I love you too. Always and forever exactly as you are." And that truly was enough.